All right, guys, we're back again for another great episode of PFREI. I'm your host, Fuquan Bilal, and today we have the lovely Lauren Hardy. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So Lauren actually, she's a wholesaling coach. She teaches virtual investing, and the course is Virtual Investing Mastery. And I wanted to bring you on the show because you're actually an active investor who actually does wholesaling, and you help other people spreading the love that way, teaching them how to get into wholesaling. Now, wholesaling actually is a topic that everybody is all over, and we'll dive into it in the show. Most people, especially a lot of new people, they feel as though that this is the lowest barrier to entry, or lowest entry point into the real estate business because of the cost that it takes to get involved. But what they really don't understand is the time that you have to invest, which time is more valuable than money, to actually learn it and master it. It's not just A to B, B to C, or you find a property, you put in the contract, and you find a buyer. There's a lot involved with that. So we'll talk about that on the show. Thanks again for being on the platform. The first question I'll always ask Lauren first is, why are you passionate for real estate investing?
I kind of grew up with the idea that I would be in real estate. So my dad, he was a college professor, and he was also a CPA, and he started investing in real estate on the side. He started buying rentals in the small town that he was from, Yorksville, Ohio. And he always said, from a young age, I mean, he was taking me to these rental properties in the summer, like when I'm like 10 years old. And he always said, if I were to do it again, I would have gotten into real estate, Lauren. So from a young age, I was like, I guess I'll just get into real estate because I don't want to make the mistakes that guy made, right? Yeah. I really had no other reason other than just like my dad just telling me that he made this mistake in his life, that he should have gotten into real estate sooner. So that's what got me into it. And I did start out more in commercial real estate, and I worked more on like the corporate real estate side before I actually started investing for myself in residential.
But what drives that passion? What makes you jump out of the bed and say, I need to find another deal today? Like, what gives you the passion to do it, the motivation?
What's funny is, like, I feel like maybe I'm unique in this way. Like, I could do anything as long as it's like entrepreneurial. So I have more of an entrepreneurial passion because I love the creative freedom that I have as being an entrepreneur and owning my own business. So I could be selling like high-end pillows and probably be very passionate about it. But I also love the time freedom I have with being a real estate investor. I do carve out my own schedule. I very much have built my day around just doing all the things that I love. And that has enabled me to be there for my two children who are 6 and 9.
Oh, good, beautiful. So that's the common denominator that I hear from a lot of the guests on the show is the freedom, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone is searching for that freedom. So for those of you who are new, if you're still, of course you have to pay bills and you're working a 9 to 5 and you're trying to figure out a way how to get out of that. I always tell people it's not as easy as it looked, right? Because we have the experience, we've been in it for years. We make it look easy because we built the system and the process and we have a habit of doing it. But it just didn't start out like that for you. Like now you got into wholesaling, you actively do it and you teach it. What made you go that route instead of, going and being a full-time developer or fix and flip guy or buying multifamilies? What made you choose that route of wholesaling?
Well, I actually did start out fix and flipping. So my start was, I started 8 years ago, and I live in Southern California, Orange County, California. It's a very high price market. When I started, there was still a lot of seller distress. It was in 2012, there was still quite a lot of foreclosures. So it was actually pretty easy to get a good deal where I lived in my own backyard. So I actually did start out with like the traditional HGTV, in my head, like I'm going to flip houses. And I did that for a few years. But what happened was the market started changing. And as demand for properties in Southern California went up, it became very difficult to get a property under contract at the, a rate that I needed to get it at to be able to turn it around and make a profit. I wasn't getting the margins that I was getting in 2012. My margins were starting to get cut literally like in half. And not just that, it was costing me more money in marketing dollars to even get these deals. So I was losing money across the board, higher overhead expenses and a lower gross profit. So I had to figure something else out. A lot of the issues that I was having, now everybody across the country was probably experiencing a similar thing, but not as drastic. I live in Southern California, OC, LA. I mean, these are hot markets. Anybody who lived in those types of markets, like say you're in a New York, Long Island, Miami, I mean, you felt it along with me. But in the middle of the country, the Midwest, lots of, East Coast markets down in the South, they weren't feeling it quite as bad. And I realized that when I looked around at my, fellow investor friends, they weren't having the same experience as me. So I realized it was around 2016, I need to diversify and pick a market that's out of state. Now that's what took me into different types of investing. So the first thing I got into was building homes. So I did get into new development in Nashville, Tennessee. So I started like that. That was my first virtual venture. And when I was in Nashville, I got comfortable with developing properties and what developers were looking for. I realized they were just looking for these lots. They were looking for homes that they could tear down and build, 2 homes in its place. So I started looking for those opportunities in, those lot opportunities, and then selling them to other investors. So that's, traditional wholesaling. So in Nashville, I diversified. I did a little bit of development, a little bit of flipping, a little bit of wholesaling. What I realized was when you're out of state and you can't watch over your flip projects specifically, it's very difficult. So that's what made me decide to just focus strictly on wholesaling. If it's going to be that I'm virtual, I want to just wholesale. I want to sell to other investors. I don't want to deal with contractors that are lying to me from across the country.
The contractors don't lie. That's not true.
Never. Never. So that's why I wholesale now virtually, primarily. And I found a niche. I found something that works. It's I systematized it where I don't really have to work that hard. I have a team that runs my business, and I just have to check in for like 30 minutes a week. So it's enabled me to now coach virtual wholesaling, which is something that there's not a lot of coaches on like that cover the topic of like investing outside of your backyard. How do you invest out of state? There aren't as many, coaches coaching that topic. So it's given me this really cool opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. I belong to a mastermind, and these guys, the same situation, their market prices increased and they started to go to other markets and do stuff virtually as well. We're going to touch on that 30-minute a week thing, because I'm a little jealous of that 30 minutes a week. I'm not that free. I'm free, but 30 minutes a week. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think that's really a good point you brought up about being able to do this from a laptop cell phone, and having systems and processes in place. Key thing that you mentioned that allows you to do that allows you to work 30 minutes a week. Did you say 30 minutes or 30 hours? You said 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Let me make sure I heard that clear.
Check in, check out.
Yeah. So that's because you have systems and processes in place and you have a good team.
Right.
So those were key things that you mentioned that I heard that help you get to that level. Now, what were the challenges in getting to that point? It wasn't just, okay, here it is. You had to go through some trials and tribulations and build systems, processes. Talk about that for those people who are new, who may want to take your course or who may be interested in doing stuff out of their backyard and learning how to do virtual stuff. What was the challenge going through building that virtual process?
Years of challenges. I would say, I was virtual for like 4 years before I came out with a course on it. And it was, the 4th year where I finally felt like, okay, I've figured it out. I know it came from a compilation of hard mistakes, 5-figure mistakes, and I learned like, okay, I'll never do that again. So, something would happen to me and I'd go, all right, like, was that worth it? Like, how could I avoided that next time? Sometimes it's just ditch it. Don't ever do that again. So like an example is I don't like to flip houses out of state in your traditional HGTV sense, so I advise my students, I say, don't try to be a house flipper across the country unless you have a joint venture partner who is vested in the property financially, who is local, who is there, because it is going to be very difficult. Now, I did enough of those flips from across the country. It took me like several of them to go, I'm never going to do this again, because it never worked out. So learn from my mistakes, and don't make that, same mistake. But I realized I want to go to a wholesale model, and that was drama-free, easy. When you deal with these problems, that pulls you in the business. So now I'm not working on my business, I'm working in it. So I realized, like, with every mistake, drug me back into the weeds, so I just fixed the little mistakes and came up with kind of like laws, like, okay, I'm never going to flip out of the country. Out of my state, unless there's a joint venture partner there that's, has money in the deal. Then I will. Those kinds of things have enabled me. Those rules have enabled me to kind of take myself out of my business, because there's no drama. I mean, really, you're in your business probably because you're dealing with drama. So just, cut the drama out.
Yeah. Let somebody else take over the drama, right? Put somebody else in charge to manage the drama, and you consult and manage them and guide them to continue to generate that income for you. Those are a lot of good points with the challenges that you went to in building a process to ultimately allow you to share your knowledge with others and to keep you free raising those two kids of yours and enjoying that. 'Cause that's the best part, is especially during the ages that you mentioned. You need to be there for them for all the games and everything else and spend that time with them. So real estate, as you mentioned from the very beginning, gives you the freedom to do that. Let's talk about now the risk with virtual wholesaling, because nothing is really risk-free. What's the risk if someone is going to invest outside of their state? You mentioned things like, only do a JV deal, only do it if it's a JV deal, if you're doing a full rehab. But what about a wholesaling deal? You can possibly lose money on a contract you tie up and things don't go right, or you don't get your inspections done on time that get you out of the contract. What are some of the risks that you run into virtual wholesaling?
Well, I would say that wholesaling arguably is one of the lowest risk real estate investing activities that you can do. I mean, it's essentially, I'm talking contract assignments. So we're not really it's not really our money. I'm going around and directly assigning my contract to an end buyer, so I don't have to close on these deals. So I don't have my money on the line. So I would say I've eliminated the risk there of losing money.
Really? There's no earnest money deposit or anything when you tying up this stuff, the way you have it structured?
I know a lot of people, and so these are the things that's like,
these are the secrets, right?
Well, no, these are the secrets. Yeah, these are the secrets. That I kind of, with experience, I'm like, why are you offering earnest money? Like, why are you offering to give that away? So I don't offer earnest money to the sellers, and believe it or not, I'm going to be honest, I don't think in 8 years I've ever put an EMD down.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I talked my way out of it. I don't know how, but I talked my way out of it. Now, here's what I do. So I'm not sure how familiar your audience is with contract assignments and how like wholesaling works, but essentially I'm getting a contract between myself and a seller. I'm telling this seller, I'm not going to give you an EMD. I'm just not saying it. I'm just not bringing it up. I buy these properties off market. So often these sellers don't have realtors kind of getting in their ear saying you should take an EMD. Most of these sellers don't even really think about that. But I do give them a very clean contract. With that contract, we've done so many deals that first of all, I have a list of properties we've closed in the area. So they feel comfortable. We know what we're doing and we portray that. So my contract is very simple. I do have some contingencies in there. I do have an inspection contingency. So if the property, when we go in and look at it, which by the way, we tie these up over the phone. So we don't even look at these properties. We get the contract out, we agree on a price over the phone. And when we go and look at the property, if it's determined that, there's a repair that, the seller didn't really tell us about, we'll talk about it with the seller at that time. I have an inspection contingency that has allowed me to renegotiate my contract during the inspection due diligence period. So just during, that saves me a lot. That, removes a lot of like liability for, me and whoever else is, working their deals that way. Once we inspect and we deem that like the purchase price is doable, workable for us, given the condition of the property, we are already shopping for end buyers at that point, and we've probably already assigned one to the property. So the end buyers often come in with us to inspect the property at the same time. So I do get a lot of the end buyer feedback, like, well, hey, this price isn't good. This isn't going to work. Did you see the foundation? Whatnot. So we use the end buyer, as well to kind of help us with pricing. When we've assigned our contract, we found the end buyer, we signed what's called an assignment agreement between myself now and the end buyer. And that agreement has an EMD because I want an EMD
to make sure it's a real deal, right?
To make sure the end buyer is the real player. So I will take the end buyer's EMD and I will deposit it into escrow, and I will let the seller know what's going on. And I let them know if anything backs out the end buyer, we have a $500 EMD. So and if anything does go wrong, I will give the seller that EMD. So
now, are you fully disclosing to the seller that what you're doing? You're tying up that you may sell to another buyer. You're putting all that in full disclosure, of course, in the contract. So it's full transparency, right?
It's in the contract. We even go as far, we're a little bit unique. We actually go as far as tell them that on the first phone call. We are buyers. We fully can close on the property if we want. We have the cash to close, but the second we get this property, we are marketing it to resell it. So if we resell it before closing, that's our prerogative.
Yes.
And, if you have a problem with that, like, let us know now so we can work the deal differently. But most sellers don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, as long as you meet their price and they can get what they want, they really don't care, right?
We take care of their needs, because if you think about it this way, and this is how we explain it to the sellers, is, I've taken a lot of time, 8 years of developing relationships with multi-unit buyers in this area. These are hedge funds. These are, landlords that own 50 plus properties and are trying to buy 4 a month. You don't know who they are, Mr. Buyer and Seller, or Mr. Seller. I do. I took time to develop and foster those relationships so I can move this property very quickly to one of my buyers. They don't have that. They didn't do that. They didn't take the time to do that. Their only option would be listing it with the realtor on the MLS, a realtor who likely doesn't know what they're doing. A lot of these properties are, they need a ton of work. They have tenants inside of them. So, the realtor doesn't really know how to navigate that situation. When you sell with the realtor, lots of headaches.
Yeah, they're just trying to get another listing. That's all, right? You get another listing, fill up my pipeline. If it close, it closed. Let me just get it on the market, and we'll just throw everything against the wall to see what stick. Now, question on the virtual wholesaling, because this is something that you mentioned a couple of things. You said you're closing over the phone literally, and you have a structure where you're doing a phone sale, you tie them up, you give them a range, I'm supposing, to keep them interested. You get your inspector in there, they do the due diligence, come back with values to see what you can, put on top of it, adding value down the line, putting real renovation costs. That's an area where I see a lot of wholesalers go wrong, is they don't put the proper construction budget. And you see all like memes all over the internet, only needs 20,000 in rehab, and it's like a $200,000 rehab job is just like the one wall sticking up. So how do you get around that? Like, do you have actual contractors going there or experienced people in the area, boots in the grounds, or do you just have contractors going and giving you estimates? How do you get around that challenge, getting a real renovation cost?
So this is actually going to blow your mind. I don't care about the renovation costs. So I have a completely different philosophy on offer pricing than you're describing right now. And it's more of a volume game. It works very well in rental markets the most, where I understand from a flipper standpoint where you're coming from, because I was a flipper at one point. But my end buyers are not all just flippers. A lot of them are landlord buyers. So here's the thing. You can price one property completely different for a flip and completely different for a landlord buyer, and it could be off by $30,000 and you could lose that deal. The landlord buyer will pay more. So how do you know how to price a property, right? You're in an area, you're in, I don't know, like Dallas, Texas, and there's a house, and it's maybe houses in the area are going for $140,000, and you are, maybe it can rent for, $1,300. But if you did the whole ARV minus repair thing that most flippers do, you would probably only offer maybe like $70,000, at the end of the day, because you're going to flip it and turn it back on the market and sell it for 140, right? The landlord buyer possibly would pay up to, depending on what's kind of going on there in Dallas, maybe $130,000.
Yeah, because they're buying off of cash flow, pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're buying off cash flow. So what's the wholesaler to do when you've got a seller who has landlord buyers making them offers, flippers making them offers? Of course, the seller is going to pick the highest offer. So me as a wholesaler, as a middleman, has to have a very good, deep knowledge of what the end play is. What is the most favorable end play for that seller? And it's most of the time the landlord buyers. So I have networked with all the landlord buyers in town. So I know, where they buy, how many they need to buy a month, what they're looking for. And as soon as we get something that meets their needs, I buy that property and then sell it to the landlord buyer. That way the seller's getting the most money. The seller could maybe get a flipper to make them an offer and they not take any other phone calls, and they actually just got lowballed. So long explanation of how do I come up with repairs? How do I come up with my offer pricing? I price properties as a commodity. I price a property the way you would price like nail polish at Target versus gas. You know what I'm saying?
Retail. So
retail.
Do you do anything on MLS? Like, do you actually, because you have the wholesale contract, which gives you equitable interest. Are you listing some of them on MLS, or is your network in every area just all landlord buyers, which essentially could be retail buyers? What about MLS? Are you marketing any on MLS?
So in my experience now, I hate that strategy. I've done it, like, don't get me wrong. That's why I can say I hate it. Certain markets, I have some markets that I can actually make more money on my off-market stuff. Like I can actually get better pricing. I can take out the realtor fee, because with the MLS, you have to pay realtor commissions and less hassle. And I just don't like doing it. Like, I don't like that idea, because then the seller's like, why is my property on the market, right? Like, so I have some markets where I actually do better when I do everything off market, and we've tested it. I've actually closed on houses, like with my own money, closed on it and saw like what pricing we got versus, and I marketed the same house off market and lost money when I closed on it because of the MLS situation. So wow. I tested this theory out several times, and I was like, yeah, for this area, off market is great. There are some areas in the country that don't have as big of a buyer base. The smaller markets, the markets that are just not, as heavily populated with investors in REIAs, real estate investment associations, that they are a little harder to move off market. And in those markets, I've had a list on the MLS. I don't love doing it, but it is something, you can do if it's, allowed by the, that MLS in that area. You have to make sure that it's allowed.
Got it. How do you protect yourself with, you go into the contract with the buyer? Are you clouding the title? What if, because once everybody's marketing to every single property, if you make the buyer an offer and you go into contract and someone else market to them and they're willing to pay the buyer $15,000 more, how do you protect yourself? Are you clouding the title, recording your contract, or, the strategy?
I think you mean the seller, right? How do I protect, because you said buyer, you mean the seller?
Well, I'm sorry, the seller. So you're the buyer, you're dealing with the seller.
So how do
you protect yourself against the seller? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Performance, right. So yeah, it's funny. It happens in certain areas more than others. Like I noticed in the South, like the sellers are just like, what's this contract? Like I got a better offer. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
funny, the culture difference. Whereas in the Midwest, they're like, this is a contract and I'm going to honor it. I'm like, okay. In California, same thing. Like, I don't want to get sued. Like,
Yeah.
California is
Yeah.
so litigious, right? But so, yeah, there are times where I do not file memorandums or like lien the properties if I don't have to. The only time I will is like, hey, we've locked this property up. We're already, now we're losing money because, of your non-performance. I will file, it's called a memorandum. And it basically clouds the title to show that there, is a contract, an outstanding purchase contract on this property. So that way the seller can't, go around and sell it without me releasing that memorandum. But again, I don't do that very often. I have to really think about it because first of all, it gets me in a UPS store to do a notary. Okay. I have 2 kids. I hate going to the UPS store. Like, I hate it. It's like literally miserable. Like, they will go and they like pick up all the cards, the greeting cards in the front, and they mix them all up while I'm notarizing this stupid memorandum. That's literally like, I will literally let go of a deal to avoid going to the UPS store. So I really use this thing because you have to like notarize it to file it, and then you have to notarize it to release it. So that's 2 trips to the UPS store with kids.
So that's it's rare that happen. I guess the strategies and stuff you have in place and the transparency that you give to the sellers
Right.
really stops you from doing all of that. Yeah, that was great. I mean, the last question I usually ask people during the show is, what is your biggest business challenge you have that you're trying to overcome? Right? Nothing is perfect. Everybody has challenges and struggles. Just name one that you have that's been like a pain in your behind. Maybe it's something with COVID came and, kind of twist your business around a little bit, or made you have to sharpen your pencil up a little bit, refine your processes. What business challenge are you facing right now as a coach or just general?
I think right now, because the coaching is new for me, it came on. We started working on the project around January, and we really launched in March. And I would say just time management, just not having the time to do everything. It's been very difficult. Like, I now can check my emails like maybe like 3 times a week, where I just check all my emails in bulk because I can't stay on top of my emails. So people are like, I emailed you 2 days ago. And I'm like, well, that's because I'm so busy, coaching students and helping people and doing coaching calls and, checking in with my wholesale company, to make sure that's still running, that's been very difficult for me in this new role, and then COVID hit and I'm a homeschool teacher all of a sudden with my kids. I mean, that it literally COVID hit the same month my course launched. And
Wow.
yeah. And so I had to become a homeschool teacher and also had to be a coach, on virtual wholesaling. And we got like 50 students in the first like 2 months. So I mean, at that point, I literally told my kids they graduated. I literally was like, I guess we're playing Roblox on their iPads all day long for 6 hours. My kids just like rotted their brains. Like literally, like, it's scary. I'm scared for their brains. Like, they have like holes in their brains now.
Yeah, that's funny. I remember when it happened. I became a full-time chef. I have 2 boys too. I'm a single parent. I have 2 boys,
Okay.
17 and 12.
Okay.
And I had to make sure they wasn't playing video games and doing the work. So I get it. And,
Wow.
emails from teachers, you missed this assignment, missed that
Yeah.
assignment. Then they like, what's for lunch? And,
Yeah, and
so
you're
I
like,
had
stop judging me,
to.
teacher. Like, that was the word, the emails, like the shaming emails, like, noticed Reese hasn't been on the hangout.
Yeah.
Notice I still have a job I have to go to. Like, Reese is going to repeat 2nd grade. Okay.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's good that you were able to go through the process of learning these different strategies and techniques, and now you have a place where people can actually go and learn more for you. I want to plug that. It's the wholesalinginc.com /virtual.
You know what? We have a new URL.
Okay.
So yeah, what I gave you is old. It's virtualinvestingmastery.com.
Virtualinvestingmastery.com. And that's the name of the course also, right?
That's the name of the course, virtualinvestingmastery.com.
And the social media handles is This Mom Flips. That's your
Yeah,
IG?
that's my IG.
All right, I got to follow you on IG. This Mom Flips. Make sure you
No,
guys go check it out. You said what happened?
we got to be, yeah, we're not friends on
Yeah. I got
IG.
to follow you on IG. I just saw that. I just got on IG maybe a year ago, and I got into. I haven't posted anything probably in like 2 weeks. I'm going through like, it was just too much, just managing everything else, and I like to be organic with it and let it be me. A lot of people have virtual assistants running their social media, and I like to have my blood flowing through it. So it's a lot of time and energy that you have to put into it, and to me, it's good to connect with the people. I do a show every Tuesday on IG, so. And then I had this podcast. So this podcast will be on IG also. So I'll tag you
Yeah.
when it launches, and we'll pretty much go from there. But make sure you guys follow her on Instagram and Facebook, This Mom Flips. Make sure you guys go check out virtualinvestingmastery.com. So any last words for the show? I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with the guests. This is a fun interview. What's the last words of wisdom or anything else you want to plug?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I hate these last words of wisdom because I have so many wise, insightful things to say. I don't know. You know what, given where we are, I don't know when this podcast is going to drop. So it'll be like a time capsule, but right now we may be going into round 2 of quarantine and COVID. And I am absolutely terrified. So I'm just going to say it, like, I'm going to say a prayer for all of you guys. And by the time this podcast drops, who knows where we will be.
Exactly.
Just know I prayed for you.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for having us. Another great episode, PFREI, Lauren Hardy, virtualinvestingmastery.com. Make sure you guys go check it out. Get some more wisdom and knowledge on how to wholesale using the virtual method. I'm your host, Fupon Blau. Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the other social media handles. That's all we got.